Hello everyone, and I'm glad you could join me. Today I'm going to show you how to make this summer flower themed card using the Painted Poppies stamp set. And this is in the annual catalog. It's not a new stamp set, it's been around for a couple of years. But I just love it, and I thought I would use it for this particular card. Now normally we associate poppies with the color red, but I made this one kind of a little bit different with some daffodil delight. So let me tell you what you'll need to make this card. You'll use the card base is, I'm going to set this aside here. So the card base is Old Olive, and you'll cut it at 5.5 by 8.5, and then you'll score it at 4 1/4. And I'm going to give it a little burnish with my bone folder to give it a nice crisp edge. Okay, and then for the layers we're going to use basic white, and you're going to cut 2 at 5 1/4 by 4, and one of them will be for the inside of the card. And then we're going to do a couple of techniques as well. So you're going to do some stamping off, very simple stamping off, do a little bit of fussy cutting, which is for the flowers, and then do some simple coloring. It's not going to be a difficult card to put together, but it's very pretty. I think you're going to like it. So I'm going to bring in, we'll start with some of the stamping off. It's actually, no, in the background you'll see on the bottom I stamped the I'll show you on the stamp set. We have this little cluster of flowers, so we're going to stamp that first. So I'm going to bring in I've already got it mounted, and we're going to do some stamping off. So the way, if you've never done stamping off, it just is a way to get a lighter version of the color, of the ink color. So this is Old Olive, but I don't want to use the full strength of Old Olive because it'll be very dark. I really want it just to be kind of in the background. And the way to do that is you would just stamp up your stamp, your image, and then you just put it on some scrap paper. In this case, I just have the craft paper, and you just stamp it down just to get some of the ink off. And then we're going to put it onto the cardstock. And I'm going to do it a little bit below the edge because I don't want it to be right at the bottom. So we're going to have to do this twice because it's not wide enough to cover the whole bottom. So you can see it's more in the background now rather than being a darker color, which would bring it to the foreground. So we'll stamp off again, and we'll do it at the edge, the right hand edge, just to fill it in. And there you have that. Clean off my stamp. Set that aside. Now we will use, again, we're going to continue to use the Old Olive, and in the stamp set there's like a blob or a blotch, and that's what we're going to use just to which you can see. And we bring the card back in, so you see I did some random stamping. Again, we're going to use the stamping off technique just to put some random blobs around the card. Stamp off, and I'll put one right up here. And it's random. It's no particular place. I kind of do it off the card. I think a little bit on that side. I think I'll turn this around maybe And if you want it really light, you just stamp off twice. All right, I think that's plenty. Otherwise, it's going to get a little bit too busy. All right, so we're done with that stamp, actually. Now, I'm going to bring in I already have them mounted. I'm forgetting that I already did this in advance. All right, I want to stamp, let me show you which one. We're going to use this image right here. And I'm going to use the Memento Black. Now we did all of this stamping with Old Olive. Now we're going to be using the Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And we're going to do this on the right-hand side. Okay. And now I'm going to continue to do some stamping, but I just wanted to show you, so you'll see that when you stamp it, the image that you stamp is not going to completely cover the flowers that are in the background. But when you use your Stampin' Blends, because you're going to use the Old Olive Stampin' Blends and you're going to use the dark one, it's going to color it in a way that's going to mask what's behind it. I'm using the bullet side rather than the brush tip because I found that the brush tip, when it's a small area, tended to bleed out a little bit more than I would have wanted, and I didn't like that. So I use the bullet side, but it's whatever you're comfortable with. All right, so now this is the dark Daffodil Delight. I'm going to just color that in. And I'm just going to color the whole thing. Nothing fancy. I'm not a fancy colorer. Now you can use the light Daffodil Delight and then do some shading with the dark. That's okay too. Now I'm going to use a little bit of Wink of Stella. And I'm just going to give this a little bit of shimmer. Make sure I got enough on there. It's probably hard to see it, but it's there. I'm going to give a little bit of shimmer to the leaves as well while I'm here. Okay. Now, I could have waited and colored the whole thing, but I just wanted to show you that once you color in the leaves, now that comes more to the foreground. So it's not going to be transparent in a weird way that would, so that the background flowers show through. It's going to cover it up, so it's going to look nice. Not to mention that we're also going to put a sentiment label across it, and that also will cover some of the background. Now we're going to go back to, well, let me clean my little stamp off because we're going to go back to this particular stamp. But I want to mask some of it because I don't want to have the flower at the top. I suppose I technically could, and then, because what we're going to do is you're going to fussy cut these poppies. But even if I left it, I suppose we could just go ahead and do that, but and then that will cover it. But I'm not looking to have this piece of it. We're going to leave the leaf, but take this piece out. So I might just leave that one. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tear the piece because I don't want the giant Post-it note. So if you're just going to do simple masking, I mean, nothing fancy. I just take it and place it over the part that I don't want to have stamped on my card. And then I'm going to ink it up. Then you take your Post-it note off and just stamp the part that you want. Okay, and then, you know, as I said, this little one will cover that. Okay, now I want to do, similarly, I want to also do a second mask for the next image. But in this case, I do want to, well, I guess I could leave that top piece, but I don't want the side leaf. Right, I don't want the side leaf. I don't know if you can hear the planes going overhead. I live kind of close to the airport. I'm only 15 miles from the airport. But today it appears the traffic pattern is over my neighborhood. So if you can hear the planes, that's what that is. All right. And I have a robin singing its song outside. I don't know if that's coming through. But if it is, he's singing a nice tune out there. Okay. So now I'm going to put this in the center. I'm going to do it a little bit lower than the other one. This is where we'll do some additional coloring. Now obviously we're not going to color these two pieces because they're going to be covered up. But for the leaves, I'm just going to use the dark Old Olive Stampin' Blend. Color the stem. And color the stem. Now I want to bring in this image, which is in the stamp set, and that's this image right here. I wanted to just add another set of leaves. No, actually, you know what I'm going to use? I'm going to use the Memento Black for that and then color it in with the Old Olive ink, or the Stampin' Blend rather. So I'm going to drop it down a little. I don't want it up high. Okay, we'll color that in. That's the coloring for the stems. for the flowers, I already went ahead and stamped and fussy cut these because you don't need to see me fussy cutting these on camera. If you're not a fan of fussy cutting, don't worry. This is just a very large outline and it's pretty easy, not a complicated image to cut out. So I think you'll find that it will go fast. So I'm going to, actually I want to get my light, Daffodil Delight. And I'm just going to give each one of them a wash of color. And then when we're done with this, I want to show you some magic, because what I neglected to tell you at the beginning of this video was that we're going to apply some shimmery embossing paste to the flowers and give it a real shimmer. I mean, more shimmer than just some wink of Stella. And I don't know if you can see the shimmer on the flowers. That's from the embossing paste, and I can't tell you how easy it is. It's so easy to use. Okay, I want to just add a little bit of additional color, some shading. So you can use your dark stamp and blend if you want. Put in some shading. Where you like it. Then come back in, kind of blend it in with your light stamp and blend. Another thing that I've done, and I'm going to wait for it to dry a little bit, come back in after it's dried a bit, and it doesn't take long because this is alcohol ink, and you can just come back over it and give it some additional color with your light stamp and blend. I've done that too. I mean, I'm not a big colorer, so I just kind of play around with things until I get it to be sort of some blending that I kind of like. I know it's probably not coming out as clearly as I'd like, but okay. Now, in order to put the shimmery embossing paste on, so you'll need a silicone craft sheet, or you could even just use some regular craft paper, but it's gonna, you know, you just want to have a surface that is not going to be damaged, or you don't want to end up with like glitter everywhere. So we're going to use the palette knives, Stampin' Up! Palette knives. If you don't have the palette knives, but you do have the shimmery embossing paste, you could use a plastic knife. All right, let me see where I open this. Okay. So it sort of comes out like spackle that you get from Home Depot, right? But it's puffy. Like it's whipped, almost like whipped cream cheese. Now you're not going to need a lot of this. In fact, I used too much for one of my sample cards, and I had to toss it because too much of this paste creates an opaque look. And you don't want that. All you want is the shimmer, and you don't need a lot of that. So just keep that in mind, that less is more, as they say. So don't use a lot. And then just, you'll see the shimmer, and you want to just scrape off the excess and cover it back up. And that's it. I mean, this jar is probably going to last me, it's probably going to last me a really long time. Oops. Sorry about that. All right. I won't need this craft mat anymore. All right, I'm gonna let that dry just for a sec longer. And we can, while that's just drying a little bit longer, we can do the sentiment label. And the sentiment label is just gonna be a strip of Daffodil Delight. You're gonna cut it at 3.5 by long by 3/4 inches wide. And for the sentiment, I used Thinking of You, and I used it from the On the Horizon stamp set. So it says Thinking of You, and then for the inside I put Relax and Enjoy Your Day. So, but you can use whatever stamp set you want. That just happened to be what I chose. Let me see, Thinking of You. Okay. And I'm going to stamp it in black. I'm going to make a flag on this end. And when you want a flag, and if you've never done the flagging before, I'll just mention it again. You just put a snip in the center, and then from the corner to the center, snip that. Then from the other corner to the center. And that's how to make a simple flag. Like that. All right, so I think these are dry, and I'm going to put them on dimensionals. Put a couple of dimensionals on the back. And while I have the dimensionals out, I'm going to put some onto the sentiment label as well. So this, as you can see, it's going to be covered up. So I'm actually going to tilt this up a little bit. So it doesn't hang over too much on the card. Okay, and for the sentiment, I'm going to put it at the right hand side of the card. And now I'm going to tack it down to the card base. This one was down a little bit more than the sample I initially showed you, but it still looks great. So you could make it a little bit higher, depends on where you place the image on your card. I'm going to stamp the inside. So let me take that piece. And for that one, I'm using the Relax. What does it say? Relax and enjoy your day. Then I'm going to bring in the Poppy image again. Oh, I already have it stamped. I already have it still on the stamp. And put a little image on the bottom. Let me see, I want this side. I'm only going to stamp up half of it. And I'm going to stamp off because I only want a lighter image, and I'm going to stamp it on the bottom of the card just to tie in the front of the card to the inside. You can do the same thing with your envelope as well. Decorate the outside of your envelope. Put some liquid glue on it. Give it a little bit of a back rub. There we have it. I hope you enjoyed this card. I'm going to put the, I'm going to have all of the measurements for the card on my blog, and I will include a link to my blog in the description below. So you'll have everything you need, all the information, all the details, measurements, and supplies that you'll need to make the card. And I will also put a link to the supplies in the description below. So I want to thank you again for joining me for today's tutorial, and I will see you next time.